I was born in Chicago. And, the times of the exile, my parents were in Chicago, and when I was young, they moved to Puerto Rico into a small coffee farm. So I grew up in a farm, small coffee farms. But, man, what you would say, ocho cuerdas, it would be about 8 acres, really small, tiny farm. That's what I was. I was involved in agriculture all my life with my dad, and that's what I learned. Intentionally, I just wanted to continue doing what everybody was doing, but I was encouraged by other people to go to college. And then, of course, if I was going to go to college, then it was going to be in agriculture. That's what I like, what I do. So that's how it all started. And went to school, and like most of the professionals in agriculture that come from Puerto Rico, then they go to Mayagüez and to the College of Agriculture, and that's what I did. But how I made it to Florida is an interesting story because after I graduated as a soil scientist, agronomy and soils, and I had a minor in soils, and my major was agronomy. But the USDA went to interview students, and I had already been graduated, and I was already working. But the university called me and asked me if I could sit in this interview. And I didn't want to leave the island. So I purposely made a bad interview, so I didn't get the job. And I didn't know English. And my wife was my translator because she, as well, was born in Chicago, but in her family, they kept speaking English, so she knew how to communicate in English pretty well. And she was translating for me, and she said, I'll translate so you can do a good interview. And I purposely made a bad interview, and we were recently married, just a few months married, and then the person was Jack Brown from NRCS, Florida. I remember it was still called the Soil Conservation Service. And he asked my wife, well, I really want to hire him, so tell him that I want to hire him. And I was looking at her, she said, and I told, tell him that I don't want to go to Florida. That if he wants me to go to Florida, he needs to give you a job too. And then she got a little nervous and tell Jack, he says, if you want to hire him, you have to hire me too. And Jack said, well, I came to pick up two people. What's your degree? And then she said, oh yeah, I also study here. And she was as a translator only, but she had been, and she had a master's degree in agricultural education and everything, in animal husbandry. And he was so happy, he picked us both up, and then we ended up in Florida.
So it worked out perfectly.
Yeah, but I didn't want to come. But
even though you tried for it.
Well, trying not to come. But once I came here, I liked it. Language was at the beginning a little bit of a barrier for me.
Yeah. And what kept you going, or what motivated you, to stick with the work, overcome the language barrier?
At the beginning, it was my desire to do good in my career. I mean, it's a challenge for me. I mean, when you have a challenge, in my case, I took it as a challenge. I could do this. And at the beginning, more than the technical, it was the language. Technical didn't feel so difficult because NRCS has always been an agency that likes to educate. And then if you don't know something, they'll train you. They'll teach you how to do it. So technically, I felt very comfortable, but the culture was different. The whole ambience was different. At that time, there was not that many Hispanic in the area I was. And actually, I was in this county. We started in this particular county, Hendry County, right here where we are today.
Yeah, right here where we are today.
I see Sarah. Sarah has the job that I had.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I started. Where Sarah is right now, that's where I was.
That's amazing. It's like one of those full circle moments where it comes back
together.
Yeah. So what is it like to be here today now, at this point in your career, like here after you started?
No, today it's amazing, especially with Mano Yola. It makes a big difference for me because I remember coming here trying to provide technical assistance to English-speaking farmers and seeing their frustration with me. But at the same time, when you put it on reverse, then you see the Hispanic farmer trying to get technical assistance, but they have this cultural or language barrier. And I see what Mano Yola does, and I see what NRCS does with the diversity in the agency. And to me, it's so important. And I feel so connected because of that, because I lived some of it through the agency, through the beginnings of my career. having the language barriers and trying to pursue and to have the few instrumental people that come to your life that helps you either with your language, with your culture, or with your technical aspect, with your career. Having those people around you is so important.
And how do you think this work positively impacts like the Hispanic community here, like the Hispanic producers?
I, I think I think the connection. I think the people is possibly the greatest resource of the natural the resources we have is the people. Is it? You know, NRCS evaluate the land based on soil, water, you know, air, plants, animals, and then they have the age. They say swap up plus age. Age is a human factor. I believe that's the most important. I think if you connect to the farmer as a person, then everything else will fall in place. And then throughout my career, I never found some success on knowing more information. I never found success on learning more about the technical things that happen in the field, the science behind it, although it's extremely important. The majority of the success that I have found within the agency, within employees, and within the farmers is the human connection.
That's the most important part.
Yeah.
That like, secret ingredient.
Yeah, it's the handshake. It's the handshake. It's to remember that farmer that in the middle of the field tells you a story about his grandkids. And then when you come back the second time, rather than asking about the cows, you ask him about the grandkid. All of a sudden, you see that smile comes up, and it's like, you can come back anytime. You know?
Yeah, you're building that personal connection.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. That was my experience with the Seminoles and things like that. When I started the Seminole tribe program with the NRCS, that human connection was what made it happen. So with the Hispanics, it's the same, with any culture.
Yeah, it's the basis of everything.
Mhm.
The base of everything. Yeah.
People.
Well, anything else that you want to share or that you think folks should know about?
And what can I say? I think once you talk about people, then you start at the most important point, care for the people, and once you care for them, you care for what they care for. We right now are in Ariel Avila's farm. He calls it La Trinidad in honor to his grandmother. That's the people connection. He calls the farm La Trinidad because he remembers where he grew up in La Trinidad Finca in Venezuela. I remember the coffee crop that my dad and I had. I remember when I started implementing NRCS practices and all the neighbors coming over to see why my coffee was looking better than their coffee. Sitting here at this farm talking about people and yet caring for the land is probably the greatest, most important connection we can ever do. It's what I've been doing for the last 37 years of my career. And as long as the good Almighty allows me to do it, I want to keep doing it. And I think Manoyola, Victus, and I just got to know these people in the last, I would say 6-7 months. And I retired from NRCS for personal reasons to care for my dad, my father. And I went through that period of like when you leave the mountain, you have to go down and walk through the valley in order to go to the next mountain. I went through the valley, and then Manoyola approached me. And then I think we're going up the hill again.
Yes.
So it's that human connection.
That's great. Yeah, it's so wonderful to have you on the team too, and to hear all about your
Yeah,
story.
same here.
So thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
sharing
I
all of
appreciate the
that.
time.